And here is a article in the New York Times captioned, "You are a suspect." And they're talking about the Homeland Security. Every purchase you make with a credit card, every magazine subscription you buy and medical prescription you fill, every website you visit, an email you send or receive, every academic grade you receive, every bank deposit you make, every trip you book, and every event you attend will be recorded, or can be recorded. They go on and they talk about recording of applications for passports, driver's license, bridge toll records, judicial and divorce records, complaints from noisy neighbors to the FBI. This is, folks, it's here. It's alive and well. And here's another article from the New York Times, A Snooper's Dream. And this is dated November 18, 2002. They talk again about total information awareness. It's a project of the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. It's called DARPA, which helps develop the internet and host of cutting-edge military technologies. It is run by John Poindexter, the retired Navy Rear Admiral, who was Ronald Reagan's national security advisor, and in that capacity helped devise a plan to sell arms to Iran and illegally divert the proceeds to the rebels in Nicaragua. All transactions of everyday life, credit card purchases, travel, and telephone records, even internet traffic, email, will be available to them. And this is one that's really scary. This was in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and it's July the 2nd, 2003, a very recent article. I'll just read a couple of lines from this. The Pentagon is developing an urban surveillance system that would use computers and thousands of cameras to track, record, and analyze the movement of every vehicle in a foreign city. Don't think they won't use it in our country, too, by the way, folks. Police scientists and privacy experts say the unclassified technology could easily be adapted to spy on Americans. The project centerpiece is groundbreaking software that can be automatically identify vehicles by size, color, shape, and license tag, or drivers and passengers by face. The project is being overseen by DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and is creating a computerized diary that records and analyzes everything a person says, sees, hears, reads, or touches. Continuing, U.S. police use cameras to monitor bridges, tunnels, airports, and border crossings, and regularly access security cameras in banks, stores, and garages for investigative leads. Philadelphia Inquirer, July 2, 2003. Now, why and how does this happen? We have Congress passing these laws that take away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties. Earlier in my interview, I mentioned the Franklin cover-up. Well, this is a case involving the use of children for sex by high-level politicians in Washington, D.C., and also the kidnapping of children. It involves satanic cults. It involves 18 mysterious murders or deaths, actually mysterious deaths, but many of them were murders. Cover. I bought up this tape, and it is available, by the way, through my website, tedgunderson.com, small letters, tedgunderson.com, as is the Finder's Report, which I mentioned a few moments ago. So the show did not air, but it was listed in TV Guide. I recently wrote off to TV Guide and asked for a copy of the TV Guide for May the 3rd, 1994. Here's a copy of what that I received in return. You'll see here, right here, that Conspiracy of Silence, which is the video, is not listed, although it was listed originally. And in its place, we have a show called balance of nature, the diminishing lynx population featured a comparison of a wild lynx with a captive one. Well, I wasn't going to be outfoxed by the mainstream media, so what did I do? Well, I went down to the LA Times personally, and I pulled the TV log for May the 3rd, 1994. And here's the TV log for May the 3rd, 1994. You see it right there. Conspiracy of silence is listed. Well, maybe it was listed on the West Coast and not on the East Coast. So I then went to the Philadelphia Inquirer. And TV log Philadelphia Inquirer is listed also. Conspiracy of silence. Mainstream media, the control that they have over us. And this is the reason we are not being told actually what's happening in America today. In a poll, a recent poll in Europe, this was reported by Time Magazine 2002, there were 250,000 Europeans who were asked what nation poses the greatest threat to world peace. 7.8% of the Europeans polled said North Korea, 8.9% said Iraq, and 83.3% said the United States. So what's happened to the great FBI? I'm proud to say that I served 21 years under J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover was a man of integrity. He was honest. He was dedicated. He served for 48 years, from 1924 until he died in May of 1972. During that period, we did not have one instance of corruption, not one instance of corruption within the ranks. I recently saw a TV documentary about the FBI, and it was pointed out that J. Edgar Hoover was a rascal because he kept all those secret files on Congress in Washington, D.C., where he could blackmail them. Well, it's interesting, when we had those files, we didn't have these problems that we have today. Actually, let me explain about those files, because I was personally involved in them, and I have been there. I've reviewed some of those files. I reviewed Richard Nixon's file on one occasion, because I had to, because of a case that I had in headquarters. I was assigned to headquarters, by the way, for 5 years. I go out on a bank robbery. I interview John Smith. John Smith gives me the description of the bank robber, 5'10", 170. And after I obtain that information, John Smith says, by the way, Mr. Gunderson, let me mention that I have information that I think would be of interest to you. Congressman XYZ is frequenting a house of prostitution, and as a matter of fact, he paid the hooker, the prostitute, $100 in his personal check, with a personal check, after he was serviced. Now, this actually happened, by the way, in Tennessee back years ago. I happen to know about the case. It was a U.S. congressman. So here I am at a bank robbery. I write up my bank robbery report, but I had this other information, so I write a separate memo on the other information. I send it to Washington, D.C., personal attention of Mr. Hoover. Mr. Hoover puts it in the file. It's important, and I'll tell you why it's important. We never should have destroyed those files. It's important because if Congressman XYZ is considered for a federal judgeship, considered for an ambassadorship, we would then pull that information out and investigate it. We didn't investigate it at the time, but we did have the information. It was raw intelligence, true. It had to be confirmed. It had to be credible at a later date, possibly, if we were going to delve into the situation. So that's the use of those files. But he died in May of 1972. And then Congress said, well, we don't want another man to be in power for 40 years like J. Edgar Hoover was, because he has too much power, too mighty, too powerful. So we passed, Congress, we will pass a law that says no director will serve more than 10 years. And then Congress also said, members of Congress said, you know, we have to get rid of those Hooverite guys because they're loyal, they're good Americans, and they're dedicated. So we're going to put a mandatory retirement on the agents of age 55.